Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So, it is now the second half of August, which means more Xbox Game Pass games. Yeah, that's right. Let's go. But yes, they just announced 8 more games, and I absolutely love this lineup. We did get another Ubisoft inclusion that I'm just thrilled to see, but there's also a few day one releases that look really interesting as well. So we're going to dive into all of those games here in just a bit, and I'll kind of highlight some of the games that I think you need to keep an eye on because I definitely think that there's a few in this lineup here. Also, a big new game showcase was surprisingly just announced for September, and legitimately, if September starts to shape up the way some of those rumors are indicating, this might actually be the second E3 caliber month for 2022. We might have a lot of delays, but we certainly do have a lot of showcases to kind of make up for some of that. So we'll go over that one as well. This should be just an overall fun day for gamers. But per usual, before we get started, make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button below. We're almost to that 50,000 mark, so let's get there. Hit those buttons below and let's make it happen. With that said though, let's just go and get right into the video, starting off with an upcoming first-party PlayStation game that we really don't know too much about as of this moment, but still, I think exciting all the same. And that's Team Asobi's next game. This here is the studio behind Astrobot and Astro's Playroom, which I genuinely do believe are among the all-time great 3D platformers ever made. This studio, without a doubt, has won my heart over. I love their games. I can't wait to see what they do next. But their games, they are filled to the brim with charm. You can tell that they love making games, and the overall design are just a masterclass of gaming. As for their next game, though, we did get a few new minor details, nothing really necessarily too major, but still just enough to give us some hints as to what to expect. In an interview with GameIndustry.biz, they did note that their next game is in development and is their biggest game yet. In fact, they're now up to 60 employees, which goes to show you that Sony does have some real confidence in this studio, allowing them to tackle an even bigger project than what we've seen from them in the past. The biggest hint here, though, was with Team Asobi saying that experimenting with hardware will continue to be their main focus. So just like Astrobot and Astro's Playroom, do absolutely expect some type of central focus on hardware itself. Astrobot, of course, was all about virtual reality. Then you had Playroom, which was all about the DualSense controller. They tie the hardware in with the gameplay. So I think with that in mind, my first guess, which was pretty much what I already kind of thought in the first place before even this interview, is that their next game will likely be a PlayStation VR 2 title. Now, I'm personally okay with that because I think Astrobot is one of the best VR games to this day, really. So I'd be interested to see what they can do with even better VR hardware and just more experience under their belt. Now, I suppose they could possibly do another DualSense game, and that would have a bigger market on paper, so I'm not necessarily going to rule that out, but I do imagine that it will probably be PSVR 2. I mean, Sony will invest in the VR. They're not just going to release a new VR headset and offer zero first-party support. I mean, they already have Firesprite working on Call of the Mountain, and I think Team Asobi is another perfect studio to just kind of pencil in for a VR title. Nonetheless, I'm very excited regardless of what Team Asobi is working on next. I really do love this studio. Next up, though, Xbox has now admitted what we kind of already knew in the first place, but now it's all out in the open, and that's that the PS4, in fact, did outsell the Xbox One more than 2-to-1 last generation. Microsoft did stop reporting total Xbox units sold back in 2016, and instead started to focus on engagement, as they claimed that was quote-unquote the key metric of success. So, while we've had different estimates as to what the Xbox One sold, we've never really had anything official. However, with that Activision Blizzard buyout, and with Microsoft trying to get that through regulations, they've now admitted to the Brazilian regulator, which has been very public up to this point, that the PS4 did in fact double the Xbox One in total units sold. Now, this does actually kind of line up with the estimates that we've seen online. We know that the PlayStation 4 sold 117 million units, and estimates put the Xbox One at around 50 to 55 million units. So it does appear that those estimates are within accurate range. So I think on one side, I mean, this does show you how dominant Sony was last generation, which again, I don't think is necessarily a big surprise. I think that the Xbox One was a very, I mean, it's hard to say with that console because they they come out the gate and they made this huge blunder with Don Matrick and their messaging to gamers. It was a very rough generation for them early on. They did improve as time went on, or at least in terms of fan feedback. They started to get a little more fan approval the later we got into the generation, as Phil Spencer tried to change the culture and image of Xbox. And 50 million, I mean, it's still decent. That means it outsold beloved consoles like the Nintendo 64 and GameCube. But at the end of the day, it's a huge drop-off compared to the Xbox 360, and you don't want to see that type of decline. It's kind of the PS2 to PS3 situation. If you look at the PlayStation 3 in a vacuum, you can kind of say, well, it sold 90 million units. That's good, right? No, wrong actually, because they gave up a lot of ground to their main competitor being Xbox, and it was a big drop-off compared to the PlayStation 2. So Xbox One ultimately will go down as a failure for those reasons. It was a big drop-off from the Xbox 360, and it majorly got outsold by its main competitor, being the PlayStation 4. Though ironically, all these years later, it kind of bodes well for Microsoft, because it's a very good point for them to bring up with these regulators. It shows them just how dominant Sony has been and why this acquisition doesn't even come close to a monopoly. So it's actually a smart thing for them to bring up, and that's the goal with them letting regulators know. Since we're talking about Xbox, though, let's just go and talk about Game Pass. I mean, we all kind of love this time of month where we get more Game Pass games. And, well, we actually got a great lineup of games for the second half of August. Yeah, let's just go and check it out over here. As you can see, they announced 8 new games, including Coffee Talk, Commandos 3 HD Remaster, Immortals, Fenyx Rising, Midnight Fight Express, Opus, Echo of Starsong, Tinykin, Exapunks, and then Immortality. Now, I think this lineup is kind of a prime example of why I just love Xbox Game Pass so much. There's a good mix here of bigger games, and then also those day one releases that kind of keeps me subscribed, as there's just always something new and interesting to play. The first game that I kind of want to highlight here, though, is the big new inclusion, and that would be none other than Immortals Fenyx Rising. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you probably know exactly how I feel about this game, but I do 100% believe this is one of the better Ubisoft games that I've played probably in like the last 5+ years at the very least. It is often an overlooked game because not everybody necessarily loves its art style, but I'm telling you, don't let that distract you. That would be a huge mistake here, because it's genuinely a very good game, and for that matter, when you play it on the Xbox Series, I personally think that it actually looks pretty good in person. The scenery and colors just pop off the screen, especially on an OLED TV if you do have one. Immortals Fenyx Rising, though, is a big open-world game. It's got a good sense of humor, and as you might have noticed, it has a lot of similarities with Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, I mean, I would say that's a very good thing. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's necessarily a clone per se. It's very much its own game, but there are some very clear Breath of the Wild inspirations. Overall, though, I mean, this is a very fun game, and I am thrilled, just absolutely thrilled to see it go to Game Pass, because, I mean, that means more people will get the chance to play it for themselves. I would highly recommend this game when it comes to Game Pass on August 30th. Now, the next game here is a day one release that I'm personally very excited to play myself. I've talked about this game numerous times on the channel, and that's Tinykin. This game's like a mix of Pikmin with 3D platforming, and then you have a Paper Mario-like art style. I love all three of those things, so I'm very curious about this game. I'd say one of the reasons that I'm so confident in this game, though, is because the developer behind Tinykin is Splash Team. Now, I know a lot of you all probably don't know Splash Team is, which, I mean, fair enough, but they're behind Splasher, which is a very good and creative 2D platformer. If you've played it, you probably know what I'm talking about. They do have some Rayman talent over there, so, I mean, we know for a fact that they know how to make good games, and I think Tinykin will come out and surprise a lot of people. Definitely don't sleep on this one, and the fact that it will launch directly into Game Pass on August 30th makes this an easy download. And I can really say the same thing when it comes to Immortality. This is yet another day one release coming out on August 30th as well. I guess that's just a busy day apparently. I wish they would kind of spread things out a little bit better, but nonetheless, Immortality is the next game coming from Sam Barlow, the creator of Her Story. So fans of those interactive FMV type of games, definitely need to pay attention to this one here. In Immortality, though, you'll explore lost footage of an actress who's gone missing, and you'll try to uncover the mystery of what exactly happened. Again, this is another day one release. I mean, you just gotta love those day one releases. Do keep an eye on this one. Midnight Fight Express is also a day one release that could possibly be fun. It launches on August 23rd, and it's like this twin-stick beat-em-up shooter type of game. It's a nice little interesting combination there, and I mean, I'm not entirely sure about this one just yet, but it could be worth a try at the very least if you do like these type of games. Again, it is a day one release. As for the last one I'm going to kind of talk about here, Coffee Talk is out today. Now, I've not played this one myself, but I've often heard really good things about it, as it's often listed as one of the better visual novel type of games. Now, I do understand that visual novels are a little bit more niche and everything, but if that is a genre that you like, you might want to check out Coffee Talk. Actually, when I start to think about it, Game Pass is definitely becoming a great place for these visual novels. Danganronpa, highly recommended. The Zero Escape series, another great series. As Dusk Falls, loved that game when it released last month, and now Coffee Talk as well. Lots and lots of good stuff there. Overall, though, I mean, I really do like this lineup for the second half of August, and now really, it's just kind of like, which game do I want to start with? I think for me, I gotta go with Tinykin. I've been waiting for that one for quite a while. I just love these day one Xbox Game Pass releases, though. But let me know what you all think in the comments below. Which game here are you all most excited to play? Now, we do have one more thing to talk about today, as again, September is starting to look like a very, very fun month for gamers. We'll kind of get back to that here in just a moment, but yes, a new surprising showcase was just announced, and that is a digital Disney and Marvel Games showcase. This will air on September 9th, where they plan to reveal new content for Disney and Pixar-related games, Marvel games, Lucasfilm games, and then also 20th Century games. They also noted that in addition to all new announcements, fans should also expect updates for titles such as Disney Dreamlight Valley, Marvel's Midnight Suns, LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and even a sneak peek into Skydance New Media's upcoming game. Of course, that's Amy Hennig's new studio, which is certainly very, very interesting, as she really made a name for herself working on those original Uncharted games, some of my all-time favorites actually. So I'm very curious to see what exactly she's working on next. But that is the thing about this upcoming event. I've talked about it before, but we are starting to see this rise of licensed IP in the game industry, mostly from Disney themselves. I think after having that just insane success with Insomniac Spider-Man, they started to realize that they can do a lot in the game industry. Pretty much from that point, they've been making some huge investments with AAA games. They're working with Ubisoft, they're working with EA, they're working with Sony. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And that's really only more evident with them now having enough content to put together their very own event. Now, I will say that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Disney and Marvel-related IP, but I mean, if you are a big fan of these licensed games, there's definitely some exciting times ahead. I think without a doubt, we will start to see more Marvel characters get their own games. I mean, we already have rumors of things like Black Panther as an example, and I mean, Star Wars already has like 5 games in development, so yeah, absolutely do expect more of this going forward. I think the one IP that could get me interested, though, is Daredevil. Daredevil and Spider-Man are really the two that kind of sticks out to me personally, but nonetheless, Disney is definitely serious about gaming right now, as we can very much see. Honestly, though, I think the more we see this kind of stuff, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Disney starts to gain interest in some gaming acquisitions. We are in an acquisition season, so, Disney, I mean, they could actually start to garner some interest in some of that. You never really know, though. But again, this is just yet another showcase for the month of September. As I mentioned earlier, September is kind of shaping up like this second E3 caliber month. We already had the Tokyo Game Show, Capcom, they're doing some things next month. You have Ubisoft Forward, and then both PlayStation and Nintendo are currently rumored to have their events as well. Now, we'll kind of see about all that. Nothing's really confirmed as of this moment, but if they do show up in September, fun times ahead. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you think Hideo Kojima will show a new game trailer at Gamescom? And as you can see here, 45% of you said yes, while 46% of you said no. Yeah, talk about split results, that's what you're seeing here. It's about half and half on whether or not you expect to see Hideo Kojima at Gamescom, but I think based on just past history, I think at the very least, there's a good chance that he'll be at Gamescom in some shape or form. I mean, Kojima has been at several Jeff Keighley showcases in the past. They are very good friends, and Kojima's been a big supporter of his events. So I think for that reason alone, regardless of what his tweet indicated, there's always a chance that Kojima could be at a Jeff Keighley event. I also think that it kind of fits in terms of timing. I mean, Death Stranding released back in 2019, so, I mean, it has been 3 years since we've seen a completely new game from him. He did do the director's cut with some new content and everything, but I have a hard time believing that's the only thing that they've worked on in the past 3 years. So for me, I think the timing does kind of fit here. They very well possibly could be somewhat far on their next game. Maybe it is ready to show, and if it is, I think the easy guess here would probably be that leaked game that we saw back in June, Overdose. It is a third-person survival horror that leaked right before the Summer Game Fest, and at the time there was a lot of expectations back in June that it would show up there, but mysteriously, we saw nothing. Xbox, however, they did confirm at their own event that they are, at the very least, partnering up with Kojima to work on a game. But again, they didn't really say or show much of anything else, despite gameplay leaking for Overdose just days prior. So maybe Overdose was that Xbox game, but it just wasn't quite ready for those showcases. I'm just theorizing here, but with gameplay leaking and everything, I definitely think that there's a potential chance it's possibly ready to show. Whether or not it's actually the Xbox game in question, who knows? But I think we could potentially see Overdose in some shape or form at Gamescom. Of course, there's also those Death Stranding rumors as well. There seems to be a lot of traction behind that, though currently, as we stand, we don't really have any type of indication as to how far along that game actually is, if it is indeed in development. Either way, though, it seems like a lot of you all are very split on this decision, so it'll be very interesting to see who is on the right and who's in the wrong when it comes to Gamescom. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.